Before we get into today's video, I wanted to make a quick announcement. Officially launching next week, I have made a second YouTube channel called hoopsreference. I've always tried to make the content on this current channel well thought out, organized, longer form content discussing the game of basketball, and have often held back on making certain videos on topics because the discussion just wouldn't have been very long, and with how YouTube is and how they prioritize content longer than 10 minutes, I was often discouraged from discussing these shorter topics. So that's why I've decided to make this second channel, because it will be there that I discuss any and every basketball topic I want, oftentimes with the discussions being much shorter and directly to the point, while this channel will be reserved more for my typical storytelling, list, or other long-form videos about players and topics. The link to the hoopsreference channel will be down in the description below, so if you like the content on this channel and want even more of it, make sure to go subscribe to it, as all support would be very much appreciated. Now with that out of the way, let's get back to this video. The topic of today's video revolves around 3 teams on the brink of serious championship runs this season, but realistically, as currently constructed, probably don't have a real chance of achieving that goal. They sit high in the standings and already have established cornerstones capable of winning them a lot of games, but based on a few flaws in the team, which differ for each squad, they will ultimately be held back by the time the postseason comes around. With that said though, the trade deadline is just around the corner, and if I were these teams, I would definitely try to be very active in the market, because one home run move could bump them into contender status. Before we get started though, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel, as all support is very much appreciated. Now with that being said, let's begin. The first team on this list is actually a team that many in the offseason saw as title contenders, being the Philadelphia 76ers, but one glaring weakness on the roster that was known all the way back then has turned out to be much worse than we thought. The Sixers are currently in 6th place in the Eastern Conference, which is well below where they should be in relation to the rest of the conference, but to be fair, the difference between the 2 seed and the 6 seed is only separated by 2 games, so with the entire second half of the season left to play, I do fully expect the standings to fluctuate, and I would be shocked if the Sixers actually finished 6th. When Jimmy Butler chose to leave in free agency this summer, the Sixers went all in on building a dominant defense, but in doing so, they sacrificed a ton on the offensive end. In the sign and trade with Miami, they acquired Josh Richardson, who was already a fringe all-defensive talent. They threw a ton of money at known defensive savant Al Horford, and they traded up in the draft to take the best defensive prospect in the draft in Matisse Thybulle. Adding these guys to Joel Embiid, who has already made all defensive teams in each of the last 2 years, and Ben Simmons, who has improved drastically every year on defense and now looks like one of the best and most versatile defenders in the entire NBA, their identity was that they would suffocate the opposition when the going gets tough, and on numerous occasions they've done just that. However, the problem with this is that these defensive pieces hold each other back on the offensive end of the floor, and as many times as the defense has saved them, the offense has held them back. Al Horford throughout his career has been an average to above average 3-point shooter, but this year, his shot has fallen off a cliff. 98% of his 3-point shot attempts come with the defender at least 4 feet away from him, which seems pretty wide open, and yet he's shooting the worst percentage from deep he ever has since he started shooting them in volume 5 years ago. Josh Richardson was only ever a mediocre shooter in Miami, and that hasn't changed in Philadelphia either. And then Thybulle's defense was always heralded, but his offense has come and gone, especially with his shot. Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid need shooters around them to maximize their strengths. Simmons, despite being surrounded by non-shooters, has still assisted on more threes than anyone else in the NBA, because the attention he draws when he attacks the basket results in a ton of easy looks for these guys. So, bringing all of this back to the topic of this video, the Sixers need to bring in a high-level shot maker from the perimeter, specifically a guard that can create off the dribble. There have been rumors that the team is interested in CJ McCollum of the Trailblazers, and honestly, a player of his caliber would be an absolutely perfect fit to take them to the next level, but his price tag is going to be steep. They've also been rumored to be interested in adding Derrick Rose, Davis Bertans, Malik Beasley, and a few others, and all of those guys address a need, and while some of those players fit more than others, the Sixers need to do something. The worst thing that they could do is be complacent and stay put as a team, because the combination of shooting and lack of bench production will hurt them in the long term. Up next on this list of teams on the verge of legitimately competing for a championship but still needing to make a move to get to that level is the Miami Heat. The Heat have done the unthinkable this season, going from a roster that seemed to be maxed out in their cap room with a bunch of mediocre role players with massive contracts, and turned it into a team full of promising, hardworking, hungry young guys all growing together, playing very well, and competing hard for a top seed. Plus, when they signed Jimmy Butler in free agency, they got the star they were looking for to lead this group and provide a go-to guy and closer. However, while Jimmy's impact has definitely been felt in a major way throughout the franchise, he's not the only reason the Heat have been overachieving. For starters, center Bam Adebayo is flourishing in front of our very eyes, going from a promising yet inconsistent rotation player in his first few seasons to now being one of the best and most versatile big men in the NBA. Bam has tremendous defensive instincts, he has the agility to hold his own out on the perimeter, which is something not many bigs can do, and in the paint, he protects the rim at a high level. On offense, he's a phenomenal rim runner, finishes very efficiently at the basket, and passes the ball well for a big man as well. Then you look at other blossoming young guys such as Kendrick Nunn, Derrick Jones Jr., and Duncan Robinson, all of which were undrafted, who are vital members of the team's rotation. The Heat currently sit in second place in the East, only behind Milwaukee, but if they really want to compete with the Bucks to win the East, then relying on this much youth to produce in the playoffs seems a bit unrealistic. Experience tends to always win in the playoffs, which is why the Heat need to shop for another playmaker that can handle the pressure of big moments, and take some pressure off of Jimmy Butler with shot creation. If I were the Heat, I would be on the phone with the Thunder and the Wizards, trying my hardest to acquire either Chris Paul or Bradley Beal, because those two guys would make the Heat a scary team to face in the playoffs. It has been reported recently that Beal is incredibly unhappy with the state of the Wizards, so if he requests a trade, then the Heat, I would presume, would be immediately trying to get a deal done. And finally, the third team on this list that are one big move away from legitimately competing for a ring are the Dallas Mavericks. If the Heat are the biggest surprise in the Eastern Conference, then the Mavericks are definitely one of the biggest surprises in the Western Conference, as the level that they're playing at is higher than anyone could have possibly seen this early on. The success all starts with their second-year superstar Luka Doncic, who has already shown he's one of the very best players in the league in just his second year at only age 20. He's averaging a ridiculous 29 points, 9 assists, and just under 10 rebounds per game, doing absolutely everything the Mavs need him to do on a nightly basis to secure win after win. While Luka is doing all of that, he also has a strong group of role players and reserves around him, with tons of shooting, secondary ball handlers, and big men that can both space the floor and protect the rim. Kristaps Porzingis was brought in last season to be Doncic's sidekick for years to come, and after coming back from a bad ACL tear, he's done well. His offensive production has been a bit up and down and inconsistent, but he has protected the rim well on defense and blocks a ton of shots. The Mavericks have the two young stars to build around for the future, and a ton of good role players around them, and at the moment, they are already a playoff team that will give anyone who they play a tough time. But now that it's clear that Luka Doncic is ready to play elite basketball already, they might want to strive for even greater heights, and they can do so by searching the trade market. One team that comes to mind for me to trade with is the Cleveland Cavaliers and Kevin Love, who has been vocally unhappy in Cleveland for a while now as they rebuild. And I think he could be a great fit in Dallas. He's a big man that spaces the floor well and dominates the post, and because Kristaps tends to spend a lot of his time on offense on the perimeter, Love would get a ton of space on the inside. Also, because he's a good shooter as a big man, the pick and pop game between him and Luka Doncic could open things up even more. The Mavs were seen by many as one of the teams of the future, but realistically, they're already here. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below who you think the teams should trade for. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.